Hey, Cotton!
Yes, sir?
I've decided it's time for me to actually use a real weapon. So I need you to just
Tell you about them?
Well, yes.
Well, there's greatsword and longsword.
No, those sound too simple. Give me something more complex.
Well, you could go for switch axe or charge blade or...
No, but it needs to be down to earth.
Admiral, you're not going to get me to say that the best weapon in the game is the rock you pulled out of the floor.
But the best weapon is the rock I pulled out of the floor.
But for those of us not quite strong enough to rip a giant rock out of the floor and use it to literally block a fucking lightning laser, there are 14 other options. Everyone has their own opinions on the weapons in Monster Hunter World, and anyone like me who enjoys multiple weapons is always looking for someone else to tell them which next fun weapon that they should try out themselves. Honestly, it is a massive time sink to build a proper set for each weapon, and it's extremely hard to get the correct feel for a weapon without said endgame sets, as the timings and extra skills often change the entire playstyle of the weapon. So today I thought I would do that research for you and tell you what my list of the top 5 weapons in Iceborne is, based not on the damage the weapons do or necessarily the ease of use, but based around the enjoyment that I feel when I'm using that weapon out in the field, which is a weird statement, because honestly, how often when people say that do they actually go stand in a field? Like, just imagine an in-the-field reporter who only stands in open, empty fields of short grass.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.
But again, at the end of the day, the way you feel about a weapon is entirely subjective, and regardless of the weapons that I put on this list, no matter how you like to play video games, there is almost definitely a weapon with a playstyle that you will enjoy in this game. So keep that in mind, and without further ado, here is my list.
Number 5.
Is it greatsword?
Dracarys.
Bow.
Bow, my second love. Yeah, I guess that is a bit less touching than calling something your first love, but hey, I really like dual blades. And what can I say? Iceborne's bow on the whole has actually had pretty minimal changes, meaning that the main playstyle of the weapon, the elemental playstyle, has barely changed at all. Sure, the weapon is incredibly effective, in fact one of the best weapons in the game damage-wise as long as you're using the correct elemental sets, but it is also just fun. The clutch claw attack that bow gets is pretty damn awesome. The whole kicking off the monster and firing a mid-air shot is a really cool way to visualize this attack for bow. And of course, the other new move, the 1,000 Dragons, is just incredible.
It's nice.
I love the ability, and I was surprised massively by just how effective it can actually be in combat. In fact, allowing you to build an entire set around it. Sure, on the surface, this is just a new ability, and you can use it just like that. Just use it every once in a while. But this attack allows an entire new playstyle of bow as well, and that is just fantastic. Especially when you realize how actually fun that this playstyle is too. So the main bow playstyle has barely changed, and it was awesome before. It has gained a couple of awesome new abilities as well, and on top of this, skills like piercing shots, normal shots, and spread shots all now have an extra rank, which allows you to specialize even further into how you like playing the weapon if you care more about fun than the meta sets, and this all leads me to my main point. Bow was a top 5 weapon in base world, and it has only gotten better, and in fact the only reason that bow is down here at number 5 on my list is because of just how much better some of the other weapons have managed to get. Weapons like...
Number 4.
It's totally gonna be greatsword!
Stop it! Cut it out! I have a glandular problem.
Hunting horn.
Ah yes, the good old Doot Stick. It may be number 4 on my list of weapons, but it is number 1 in my heart. I love the hunting horn, just like everything that it stands for. First off, it's a blunt weapon, and as weird as it is, I have a thing for blunt weapons. I love the idea of smacking a monster on the head rather than slicing through its wings. You know, it just feels right to me. The hunting horn has always been one of the most interesting weapons, and in World, it was no exception. The weapon was awesome and fun to play, and honestly, it just has this feeling when you use it. This, I don't know how to explain it. This just, like, sure, you are a hunter. You are just as much a hunter as everyone else. However, you also are a fucking musician. A badass musician who knocks heads in as a method of playing your notes, which literally power up your friends because your music is just that awesome. Some of the weapon designs are also just my favorite in the game, like this is a Nogur hunting horn. It may not be the best in terms of viability in meta hunting horn sets, but I just can't not use this weapon. The only thing with hunting horn as a whole, the only thing is just how combo intensive it is. Because of these songs, it is difficult to play the weapon to its full potential if you are, well, how should I put this lightly, bad at the game. Personally, I am bad at the game, so as a concept and as an ideal, this weapon has always just been the bee's knees to me, but it just doesn't feel right to play. I think the best way of putting it is a lack of mobility. Your attacks root you down so hard for so long, the animations are really meaty, and if you get interrupted during the wrong attack, during your performance attacks, because you made a mistake, you might lose 30 seconds of work trying to get that song ready, and just, I love the weapon. I really do. If I could sell my soul to be pitch perfect at any singular weapon in the game for the rest of my life, it'd be this one. In fact, the only reason it isn't one of my main weapons right now is because I don't find it as enjoyable when you do a number of hunts in a row. I think isolated hunts with the hunting horn are super enjoyable, but once you play the same horn for a number of hours on end, it starts to feel like a concert that has gone on too long and the artist on stage just sort of wants to go home. I hold fast that I wouldn't feel that quite as strongly if I was like super good at the weapon, but as it currently stands, the hunting horn will have to live with its spot at number 4 on my list.
Number 3.
This one is great, Sod.
Long, long may.
Gunlance.
Okay, so before we get too far into this, yes, I like long Gunlance specifically. Wide Gunlance is alright, no problem there, and normal Gunlance is actually really cool, but I just don't have that much time with it because every time I pick up a Gunlance, I want to play long Gunlance. On a base level, the gameplay is the same as it was in base Monster Hunter World. Fire charged shells at the monster in quick succession. Don't use the melee function of the weapon if you don't have to, and job's pretty much a good one. But that sounds sort of boring, right? Well, Iceborne's got you covered. How about that same gameplay loop, but instead of just firing shells willy-nilly wherever you feel like, you get to attach a sticky mine to the monster. And if your shell hits the mine explodes for extra damage. So what you wind up with is this really intense game of cat and mouse, where you run circles around the monster trying to keep up with your worm stake to fire more shells into it, and the whole time the monster is trying to kill you normally. The idea of this playstyle is so simple, ridiculously simple even, but there's just something super enticing about it to me. This just primal instinct to chase down this shiny metal spike that you penetrated deep into the monster.
Holy fuck, is this wrong?
But that's it. There's no complex thing to explain here, no hidden agenda or reasoning for this weapon's placement. The reason is as simple as the weapon is. I have a primal need to chase shiny things, and this weapon allows me to explode the shiny thing, while still keeping the shiny thing intact. So, you know, good job, Gunlance. I love you.
Number 2.
Please be great, Sod.
Longsword.
And as we get to the end of the list, my entries will start to be pretty goddamn predictable. I mean, if you've followed the Pro and Noob series, or even just the other videos on the channel that have happened since the release of Iceborne, you are probably well aware of my main loves, the weapons that truly make me smile just about every time I use them, and Longsword is one of them, just not number one of them. The Longsword back in base world was just straight up my favorite weapon, no question about it. I loved the ideas of the parry style of gameplay, and Iceborne just took that and turned it up to 11 with its new Longsword abilities. The EI counter slash is awesome, just a timed parry with an incredibly tiny timing window that does a ton of damage when pulled off correctly, and it makes you look like a total badass, so, you know, that's a bonus. It is a secondary option for spirit gauge expenditure if you use it poorly, but if you use it perfectly, it is just the highest damage output possible for Longsword to use this repeatedly on the red gauge. The type of attack that I personally consider most enjoyable on the Longsword is now even more of a part of the actual proper playstyle of the weapon, and that is before we even get to the regular EI slash, the other new move, which applies a little debuff to the monster that slowly fills your spirit gauge over time. This is just a fantastic little design move. Probably the least enjoyable part of Longsword is leveling up your spirit gauge. Like, sure, yellow to red and back again, it's just the main gameplay loop, so, you know, it's nothing much. But getting your spirit gauge to red for the first time in a quest is often just just sort of a, let's get this over with kind of moment. This speeds up that whole process just that tiny bit, while adding a bit more convenience to the weapon as well. I love Longsword and Iceborne, but there is one that I simply just love more, and that one is...
Number 1.
I see. The best for last. Ah, makes sense. Great sword!
Hammer.
You had to know it would be here. It had to be. The King of Bunks itself is here to cap off the day. Where do I even really start? Well, to be blunt, the bluntness. As I said when I was talking about the hunting horn, I'm just sort of drawn towards the blunt weapons. Something about a big hammer, even the ones that are literally giant rocks with handles, just makes me happy. I love the way that they look, even the non-unique design hammers, though that said, the actual unique hammers are some of the best designs in the game. I mean, just ask the final boss or RageGaming hammers. And then there is the impact of the weapon. A lot of the reason people like a weapon like Greatsword, for example, is the impact.
He said great sword! You heard it! You all heard it!
The monster reacts to your attacks more often than not. You get flinches on big hits, and it just feels as though your attacks are more effective than most other people's. Hammer is very similar to Greatsword in that regard. Slightly lower hits, of course, but in exchange, the hammer gets movement. An absolute ton of movement. A lot of the gameplay is based around having your weapon unsheathed as much as possible due to the power charge mechanic, but that doesn't even feel like a burden due to said ton of movement. You can run around at pretty much full speed while charging up an attack, and your general damage combo is 3 quick smacks that you can easily fit in between animations. But the weapon also has a massive damage combo that almost exclusively is reserved for when monsters are downed, and it does such a ridiculous amount of damage, and it needs to have every hit actually connect with something, which when combined with a weapon that has tons of flinch power and is just absolutely bonkers at stunning things, it just makes for a super fun experience that works just as well solo as it does in any sort of group. The weapon really takes care of itself in that regard. And all of this is before we even get to the Iceborne changes to hammer. I already love the clutch claw as a whole, but something about the hammer just makes me love it so much more.
Hook.
The hammer tenderized attack is awesome, but it's the ways that you can get to it that make it what it really is. Sure, you can claw on like any normal person would, but that's boring. So hammer, the crazy damn weapon it is, got a combo that goes into clutch claw, where when if you use a charged attack, depending on the level of charge of said attack, you get a clutch claw combo option, which is a nice little solid bonk on the head from a level 2 charge, all the way up to my favorite thing, which is the combo from level 3 charge, where you do the flying spin hammer all the way up to the monster. And I think I'm getting a little too far into things here, so to wrap it up, I'll sum it up. It feels good. It feels so good. Everything about hammer to me feels good. It's the same primal instinct I talked about with long Gunlance. I just get such a satisfaction from bonking a monster on the head with a big rock and watching them fall over with stars on their head. And the fact that that functionality has all of the rest of this weapon packaged on top of it just makes me so happy. And that is why hammer is number 1 on my list. Now, you may be thinking, Cotton, you said Lance was the second coming of Gogbazios back in the beta. And yes, I loved Lance in the beta, and to an extent, I still love Lance in the full game. But the playstyle that I loved with Iceborne Lance is just using the clutch claw counter on repeat, which unfortunately once you get to the endgame monsters, it just gets you killed. Like all the time. The clutch claw attach that comes from this counter makes you immune to being knocked off a monster when they attack for a short period, but still lets you take damage, and getting hit twice by just about any endgame monster is literally death, which is always a possibility with this weapon's clutch counter, therefore making it near impossible to play in the endgame with any reliability. That said, the weapon is still incredibly fun against the challenges that, aren't a death sentence for it, so I guess think of it as more of an honorable mention. Alright everyone, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and these have been my top 5 weapons in Iceborne. Do you agree with my list? What are your top 5 weapons? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or report important news about the kingdom Animalia. Rage, Cotton, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons, even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros, there's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.